still figuring out how this new treadmill works. But welcome to the Time Treadmill. I'm Ron, and these are my wobbly thoughts about Doctor Who. Oh, that really frustrates me. The old treadmill used to just stop when you hit stop, and this one actually winds down, basically because it's a much more powerful motor that has more flywheel action going on, so it needs a little bit more time to spin down, and I'm not used to that. Makes it hard to do a dramatic opening sequence, but give me time, I'll figure it out. In the meantime, let's talk about Planet of Fire. Planet of Fire is the only story in the entire Fifth Doctor era in which Tegan Javanka does not appear on screen at any point, although she is mentioned by name at the very beginning, having just left. In her place, we get a brand new companion in the form of Perpigillium Brown, or Peri. And Peri makes quite an impression. I'll just say that 16-year-old me, when this story first aired, was very, very fond of Peri. The most interesting thing about Peri as a companion is that, well, actually the second most interesting thing, actually the third most interesting thing about Peri, depending on how you count, is that she's an American. This is the first time we've had an American companion. And it's just so strange to hear an American accent on this show. But in much the same way that Tegan Javanka was added as an Australian character because Doctor Who had been exploding in popularity in Australia at the time she was introduced. By this point, in the early mid-1980s, Doctor Who had really begun to take off in the US. For many, many years, as a boy, I was the only person I knew who knew about Doctor Who. And any of my friends who knew about it heard about it from me. But by the time I was in high school, around this era, 1984, Doctor Who was much more broadly known. It had become certainly a mainstay fixture on PBS, and its influence had definitely infiltrated strongly into the science fiction fantasy convention scene, which I was just beginning to dip my toes into at the time. And so it's not surprising that the BBC decided to add an American character to reach out and appeal to the American audience, and Peri definitely appealed to an American audience. And I am certainly happy to have her on board. At this point, the transition into the Sixth Doctor era is kicking into full gear. We've had a steady shedding of old-time companions. We're beginning to transition into what the new show will be. We've introduced our main new companion. The last story, we shed Tegan Javanka. This story will be the final one with Turlough in it. And of course, the next story is the last Fifth Doctor story. And by the way, one of the absolute best of his entire era. Plot-wise, the story also features the return and, tomorrow, the departure of Chameleon. As I've said before, Chameleon was supposed to be a regular traveling companion for the Doctor, introduced in The King's Demons at the end of the last season, but the robot prop turned out to be so problematic that he basically never appeared. He was actually filmed for a sequence in The Awakening, but that episode ran over time and that entire sequence had to be cut. So what we're left with is Chameleon being introduced in The King's Demon, then disappearing for 5 stories and coming back here to appear in his swan song for the Planet of Fire. And I'm really kind of sad that Chameleon didn't work out as a character. It's a great concept, and if he was introduced today, I think he would be a fantastic companion for the Doctor. But 1984 was what it was, and Chameleon just didn't work out for the show. There's some more interesting things to talk about for this story, but they come into play in tomorrow's episodes, where we finally learn more about Turlough's background and his planet and all of that. And so I'm really looking forward to getting to that tomorrow. I'll see you then.